Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. So today for this video guys, I wanted to kind of do a special special case kind of video, because I haven't done one of those for a little while as well, and this was actually a topic that I was planning already to cover several months ago, and I decided to say, do you know what, let me do a special case video. I just want to say guys, before I delve into the topic of this video today, this is quite a sensitive topic. We're going to be talking about the mistreatment of animals, more specifically about bestiality. I know myself that this can be a very upsetting topic, so of course please be aware of that before watching this video today. And if it is something that is really too sensitive for you, or too sensitive, which is understandable, of course feel free to skip this video. Okay guys, so first and foremost I wanted to explain what bestiality is. So for those who've never heard of it, never come across it before or anything like that, I wanted to just clarify what that is. So bestiality is actually the act of a human being sleeping, having intercourse with an animal, and it's something which in my mind I struggle to comprehend how a human can do this to an animal, because it is a form of violence against animals. So it's something which is really incomprehensible for me. When I decided to make this video guys several months ago, I felt like I've seen enough documentaries, had enough understanding about what happens. When I started to do further research just before I decided to film this video, I discovered things which I did not even know existed, to be honest with you, which were quite shocking. So let's get into the topic of what I wanted to discuss. So when I decided to first and foremost make this video, I wanted to make a video about documentaries that I had seen, this is many years ago, over 10 years ago now, this is something that still goes on, about men that sleep and have intercourse with donkeys in an area of Colombia called Cartagena, right? Which is like kind of like a more rural countryside town, specifically in just one area of Colombia. And it's said that the reasoning behind why these men, or boys as well, actually have intercourse with donkeys is, one, because apparently it helps for their genitals to grow bigger. It's said that when they go on to have a relationship with a woman, that it helps them to be able to understand how to have better intercourse with the woman somehow. And it's something which is just seen as a normal rite of passage basically within that community specifically. This is not something that takes place everywhere in Colombia, specifically in this town called Cartagena. Now, for most people, it is not normal to go and have intercourse with an animal or donkey. However, in some people's minds, this is something which is just part of their everyday life, and which they may have grown up with, especially if it's from childhood, etc. And there are young boys that also sleep with donkeys, and within this town specifically, you've got fathers that actually encourage their sons to have intercourse with donkeys. Now, in one documentary, it came about that the father actually said, but we don't have intercourse with male donkeys, only female donkeys, because we're not homosexuals. And it's like, do you think it's better that you're sleeping with a male donkey or a female donkey? Because at the end of the day, you're still having intercourse with an animal, which is quite alarming. Like, which is worse, homosexuality or sleeping with animals? I decided to do further research in regards to this town Cartagena, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it because Spanish is not my first language. I wanted to see about further mistreatment of the animals and things like that, the donkeys essentially, okay? So obviously this subject of the bestiality came up, but it said this is not the only thing that donkeys are subjected to within this area. And some of the other things I came across, and the images I came across of the donkeys themselves, were just deplorable, That is the best way I can describe it. These animals are used to obviously transport things within this town, because it's kind of like a rural, villagey kind of town. So the donkeys are used for transportation purposes, transporting goods, etc. Now, it's one thing for an animal to transport goods, it's another thing for the animal to be completely overloaded with goods that it needs to transport, and to the point where it's collapsing on the ground. That is already in itself very bad, to say the least. The second thing I came across, which I felt like, at this point, it sounds horrible to say it, but I felt like, what's worse, the bestiality or this, right? And that was, I came across an image of a donkey that had like a wound on its neck. I thought, what the hell has gone on? Is it an abscess? What is it? I then discovered that donkeys in this area are also used to practice on by gangs, and the gangs will stab them with knives to practice on, for their own purpose, to practice on stabbing people. And so it's a situation where the level of abuse against these animals is just like, I went in to research one thing and I came out discovering the level of abuse was just beyond something that I could have personally imagined, right? So there are some other things that I started to research. Now, in the process, when I looked into this town Cartagena, 2 other things came up, right? And those 2 other things were other areas where people are having intercourse with donkeys, which I didn't expect. And one of them was an area of Brazil, I think quite a remote area. And the other one was Mexico. And I thought, what the hell? Like, this is something that I wasn't aware of. Even though I've known about this practice for over 10 years, I was like, I've never heard of these 2 countries linking back to this. So in Brazil, it was a similar situation to what was going on in Cartagena in Colombia. In Mexico, though, it was something completely different. And this image came up on my screen in Google saying donkey shows. So for me, initially I thought, right, this sounds really weird, but when I've heard of animal shows like horse shows, dog shows, whatever, that's like competitive shows for animals. So I thought, what the hell is this? And I clicked on this image and it just looked like someone's house, and then it had a banner saying donkey show. I've clicked on the image and it's then come up with further information saying that there are apparently these shows in Tijuana in Mexico, and that particular area of Mexico is also known for things like illegal doctors doing cosmetic surgery and things like that, right? So I thought, right, already this is something in Tijuana, it's saying donkey shows, right? Obviously this can't be good. Then I started to read about this, right? And it basically said like there were different people coming up and saying things, and people saying, is it kind of a myth? Is it true? But the things that were coming out were making it sound more factual than unrealistic, right? And what was coming out is apparently these donkey shows are advertised, so it looks like someone's house, but it says donkey show outside, and you go into the house in Mexico, in Tijuana, and it's a woman having intercourse with a donkey, and you sit there and watch it. The last information I could find online about these donkey shows dated back from 2008, which, to be quite frank, is still not that long ago whatsoever. And I just thought, like, this is absolutely insane. Like, what person goes to sit and watch horrific things like this, okay? Then, as I continued this research, I started having things coming up about medical conditions like STIs and things like that. I thought, what's going on? So it was like, guys, with this research, it was like it led me to one thing, to another of things that I've never even heard of. So I kept coming up with this thing called LGV. I thought, what the hell is LGV? LGV, I have to read it from my iPad, guys, because it's so long, is lymphogranuloma venereum. And lymphogranuloma venereum, or LGV it's normally known as, is an STI, so sexually transmitted illness or disease, which is transmitted from a donkey to a human being during sexual contact, essentially. Now guys, I've read about some horrific things in my time when I've researched different cases for my channels and things like that. Some of the things I've discovered while doing research for this video are things that I've never heard of, that quite frankly, like, I'll just say it directly, my hands were shaking a few minutes ago, because some of these things are just so horrific that I just don't know who would do these things. And it said that the symptoms of contracting this, like a human contracting this LGV, are genital ulcers, tender lymph nodes in the groin and thigh, rectal ulcerations, bleeding and cramping of the rectum. Okay, you also get fever, weight loss and fatigue. Now, the reason why I said sexual contact as opposed to intercourse is because the LGV can be passed from a donkey to a human by contact with the fingers, by using condoms or by sex toys. So it means that you don't have to have had intercourse with the donkey to get this. You could have just used your fingers and touched the donkey in its private parts, and you can contract this LGV, which is very serious. It's also linked to chlamydia. And this LGV can be treated with antibiotics, but I'll be quite honest, the chances of a man going to a GP or doctor realising they've got symptoms of LGV, even though these symptoms are very, you know, you'll realise you've got all these different symptoms, you feel ill, the chances of a man going to a doctor for treatment of this are going to be rare, because this is just something that's considered normal within this community. So, and I'm sure people don't even know what LGV is, right? And the problem is, although you can contract this LGV, if it's not treated and you don't have the antibiotics, you don't access them, or you don't know you've got this condition, it can lead to more severe things. So obviously you can have the symptoms I've mentioned, but you can then go on to have really severe abscesses and chronic pain, and in a worst case scenario you can actually become infertile. And it's interesting how they can sleep with these animals to prepare to get married or have a relationship with a woman, and actually they're making themselves potentially infertile by sleeping with donkeys. I forgot to mention, guys, sorry, that when I was going over the things that are done to donkeys in Cartagena earlier, another thing that donkeys are apparently used for is the skin trade. And I thought, I've never heard of donkeys being used for their skin before, but it seems like just anything and everything goes basically in this area. And I wanted to do further research into where or if bestiality and sleeping with animals is still legal in some countries, because the way my research was going on, I was like, it seems like there probably are different countries which still legalize this, basically haven't banned it. And the countries that came up, guys, I thought, wow, these are supposed to be almost first world countries, and they allow these things to happen, which is horrific. So one of the countries, well, a few of the countries that kept coming up over and over again were Denmark, Sweden and Finland, which I actually could not believe, because these are first world countries which economically do very well, have a lot of money, etc, etc, and they're supposed to be educated countries, and I just couldn't believe it, to be honest. And until around 2014, 2015, in Sweden and Denmark, this was something that was still legal, to sleep with animals as long as the animal didn't feel pain, which, quite frankly, it's like, how would you know that the animal's feeling pain or not? Which I'd say probably in 99.9% of cases, the animal is in pain. So why are you legalising this in a first world country? I then went on to discover that in Finland, this is something that is still legal to this day that I'm filming this video in 2025, which I don't know how it's possible, as long as the animal is not in pain. But obviously, common sense tells you the animal is probably in pain. And then I thought, is there any other countries apart from Scandinavia and obviously Colombia where this is legal? I then discovered that there are multiple states within the US where bestiality is legal, again, as long as the animal is okay. And there were so many states, guys, there was at least 8 or 9 that I was just like, I can't even be bothered to write them down, because apparently it's just okay. And then I came across some other countries that were legalizing bestiality until quite recently. So some of those countries were Japan, Cuba, Chile, Hungary, Romania, and the Philippines. And to this day, I believe that Hungary and Romania and also Finland, these countries still legalize bestiality as we speak right now. I then discovered, guys, that bestiality was only banned in Canada in 2019. And we're 2025. So 1 year before COVID, bestiality was banned in Canada, which, again, for a very advanced first world, strong economic country, I don't understand what the hell Canada was doing, or their government, to be honest. And I don't understand, in my brain, as an educated, logical person, why people think this is okay. I remember, and about 2 months ago in the UK, there were 2 women, consequently in Scotland, that slept with their dogs. One of them did this on a TikTok live. And people thought this was hilarious. When you're sexually abusing an animal, like, why is this funny? It's not. For me personally, guys, and this is my deduction of people that practice bestiality, 1, you're not okay. I don't even want to talk about mental illness, because there's people that have mental health conditions. I have an anxiety disorder myself. There's people who have different mental health conditions and they don't practice or do these kind of acts. There's a big difference between having a diagnosed mental health condition and mistreating animals. They're 2 completely different things. For me who mistreat animals like this, you are just effed in the head and you need to go to prison. It's not about you have a mental condition or whatever, you just need to have a prison sentence. And that's it. And I don't understand how this, in first world countries, so many of the countries that are coming up are first world countries. What are the governments running these countries? These are people who have voted into power, supposedly voted into power, I want to say, because there's obviously so much corruption in politics, as we know. But still, are those people running these countries effed up in the head? And I thought, Scandinavia, of all places, how do people think this is normal? Your neighbour could be sleeping with animals. And just to show you guys, the first time I actually came across bestiality, as far as I can remember, I was about 19 years old in France. Okay, I used to live there. And there was a point where I left home and I ended up in a kind of hostel. And in that hostel, in the first 2 days, I came across this girl. She had a little boy when she was a teenager. By that time, she was similar age to me. We started having a conversation, and I don't know how we got onto this topic, but she basically told me that previously her neighbour next door, an ambulance, emergency services had to be called, and her neighbour was carried out on a stretcher. And I was just like, what happened? And she said, Jazz, she was having intercourse with her Labrador, and they had to put like a blanket over the woman because she had no clothes on, and carry her out on a stretcher. And I said, are you joking? She was like, no. And that's the first time personally that I heard of a case of bestiality. I was 19 years old. It's like these things take place more than we think they actually take place. Anyway, guys, I will leave this special case video here. Please, as always, feel free to leave your comments down below, your thoughts on this situation. If you've got any suggestions, obviously, for upcoming future videos, and as you guys know, I do mainly international cases, cults and things like that, feel free to leave suggestions down below, especially lesser known international criminal cases and cults, because I'm always happy to research them and cover them if I can on my channel. And I will see you again very, very soon for another video.